Hello everyone, this is not Pedro, and welcome back. Before I begin, I want to thank everyone who voiced their opinions in the comments of my last video. Reading what other people had to say was what prompted me to make this video and address some issues. I'll go straight to the point. I think I was wrong in my last video. Let's address why I think that, and at the same time let's look at the most common criticism that I got. By far the most common were variations of, your carving system would remove the grind, which is a core part of the gameplay loop of modern Monster Hunter. And I do think they are right. Although my system would not remove grinding, but rather would make it so you have to grind less, it would still be detrimental to the current direction that the games are going in. By lessening grinding, a huge chunk of playtime would be removed from the games. This comment also points out that trolling would become more prominent. Although I did not consider this in my last video, I do believe my system would fit better in an open world Monster Hunter game, where the end of quest timer was removed. But either way, Capcom would need to figure out all the details to provide an optimal experience to the players. There's also this comment, which adds that it would introduce more menu navigation in an already menu-rich game. Of course, I did not consider this in my last video. I do think that 5th generation Monster Hunter have too many menus, with even the farm being replaced by them. I would prefer it if Monster Hunter had less menu navigation in general from now on, but at the end of the day it would be up to Capcom to balance the next game, knowing carving would introduce one more menu. Then there's this comment, which I believe is the weakest out of all of them. They mock my idea not because of any inherent flaws, but because I used a Rathalos ruby as an example. Obviously my example was just that, an example. I'm not a Monster Hunter lore expert, and whether certain materials would need to be rarer or not, then what I showed would be up to Capcom to figure out. There's also this comment which suggests making part breaking more important for getting specific rewards. And I like this idea. I think it's worth exploring. Having specific monster materials tied to specific part breaks would make combat more deliberate and strategic. Currently you do have to sometimes break a specific part to get a higher chance of getting material, but it would be cool if the next game gave a larger focus to part breaking as a means of getting specific rewards. Lastly, there are these two comments, which in reality they just argue that my system would be less immersive to them than the current one. Immersion is subjective. Everyone experiences video games differently, and so whether my carving system would be immersive or not would come down to individual preference. In my eyes, I think my system would improve my immersion over the current RNG system of carving. There is a logical reason why I felt compelled to make my last video, and this ties into my main problem with base Monster Hunter Rise. I am now in high rank, after having just fought Kushala Daora, and up to this point my set consisted of a mix of whatever armor I could craft and the best greatsword that was easily craftable at the time. And I was doing fine. I had not, and still haven't filled the quest, and that is a problem. But anyway, even though what I was doing was working fine, building new weapons is fun, and part of the appeal of Monster Hunter. And my eyes landed on the Gossarag greatsword, but to upgrade it, I needed a Gossarag bile. And I'm gonna be honest, grinding for that bile was miserable. It took almost 15 Gossarags before the bile finally appeared. And what I find interesting is that it was miserable not because the game isn't fun, because it is fun. Not because I don't enjoy fighting Gossarag, but because the motivation to upgrade my weapon was rooted in, oh, but it looks cool. I didn't really need this upgrade. What I was doing before was working just fine. So my point is, intrinsic motivation alone isn't enough to make grinding fun, at least to me. Don't get me wrong, the high rank of Monster Hunter Rise is not easy, but it's certainly not hard enough. I wanted the game to make me change the way I play, so that I interact with the game's systems and experiment with set building. I wanted the game to make me optimize my set, or make me build another set to beat a specific challenge. I genuinely believe that then, that extrinsic motivation would make grinding fun. Those of you who read the title would be expecting this next part. I wasn't totally wrong in my last video. The carving system I talked about may not fit in the current 5th generation of Monster Hunter, but after thinking about it for some time, I believe it might have a place in a different kind of Monster Hunter. If you haven't watched Jakob's video on Monster Hunter DOS, the link will be in the description, I would recommend you do so. He brings up a lot of good points of how the genre of Monster Hunter has changed over time. The video is long, and as far as I know, he no longer agrees with everything he said in that video, so I would also recommend you watch his video on Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate if you want to get the full picture. Now, in a game like Monster Hunter DOS, where inconveniences are the rule and not the exception, I do believe my carving system would have a reason to exist. The game is rooted in survival simulation, and many of its gameplay systems make it hard for the player to grind. The main one that is important to this discussion is the season system, where available hunting locales and monsters change depending on what season it is. For example, during the cold season, the Snowy Mountains map is not available, due to it being too cold. So if the player wants to hunt a Blagonga, they will need to do other quests while waiting for the seasons to change. I believe, based on my very limited knowledge of Monster Hunter DOS, that being able to choose what parts of the monster you carve would ease a player into the changing system by reducing grinding, and would overall improve the player's experience. This would also be true for 6th generation Monster Hunter if, and only if, it went back to focusing on more of the simulator-like aspects of the game. But anyway, I know it's improbable that Jacob will see this video, but I would really love to have his input in this discussion. And that's the end of the video. Thank you for watching, have a great day, and until next time, bye bye.